Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, everybody. They had a thing called the Gridiron Dinner. Now, I don't know what it is, but I'll read this to you. It says, the Gridiron Dinner last night was fun. This is Donald Trump. He says, I'm accomplishing a lot in Washington and have never had a better time doing something, especially since this is for the American people. He tweeted that on Sunday. Now, I talked about just literally the last segment. By the way, if you want to check out anything that we've got up, you can go at any time you want, 24/7 on demand, kjradio.com, and hear what I said. But I did a clip from Michael Brzezinski where she talked about Donald Trump being unhinged, and what he tweeted after, think it was after the Gridiron Dinner, about trade. The fact that he said it was an $800 billion trade deficit, and they said Trump was unhinged when he went into this. That they call it was a trade tirade. All the things leading up to Donald Trump deciding he wants to get this $800 billion back into our economy was because of he's losing it. He's mentally unstable, and it's because of the pressures of the presidency. Now, let me tell you, I'm just going to go on human nature, because I'm going to tell you right now, I am not close to the president. I have friends in his administration, but I'm not close to him. I don't know much about him. I will see him soon at Mar-a-Lago. But here's my point. I know a little bit about human nature, and I don't see anything. I see a dude having a blast. That's what I see. I see a guy who wakes up every day, and he thought building the Trump enterprises was his purpose. When Donald Trump wrote his books, when he started his TV show, all the knowledge that he imparts onto people about business and success, nothing compares to what he's doing right now as the president of the United States. And I told people, when Donald Trump he said something after end of year one that I thought was the biggest warning that the Democrats could have taken from anything he's ever said. And Donald Trump said this, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, we had a pretty good year one, and I really didn't know what I was doing. Now, he's not saying that in the sense of I'm an idiot and everything happened by accident. He's saying I now understand the job a lot better. I now know a lot more about what the role is and what I can and can't do and how I can influence things. And so that was the end of year one. And I said, man, you take a guy with his kind of smarts who is constantly being underestimated by his opponent, the anti-Americans on the left, and he's got a year under his belt and he knows what he's doing. I remember my first year in sales, as an example, when I transitioned from engineering into sales. And I look back on my notes, and I was successful in sales to a degree. But what really, when I look back at my notes, it was like, I was successful, but boy, I didn't know a lot of things. Year two, I was salesman of the year. That's a true story. I transitioned from engineering into sales in 1987. In 1988 and 1989, in the two additional years, I was at a company for 3 years. I was their salesman of the year for 2 of the 3 years that I worked for them. Guess what I did in the 4th year? You guys, do you know this story? In the 4th year, I bought the company. I'm just telling you, when you look at a guy like Trump, I'm telling you what my track record was. I transitioned from engineering into sales, 1987. And I scraped by doubling my income as an engineer. This in year 2 and year 3 of my tenure at that company, I bought it. I mean, I was salesman of the year. I quadrupled my engineer. I quadrupled my salary. As an engineer, the second year, and I blew the numbers out of the park. In the 4th year, I bought my own company. That's what you're watching. You're watching Donald Trump say, I had a decent year. I certainly did better than I did as a businessman. So let's say he doubled what he was able to do as a businessman. Year 2 and year 3, if he has anything close to what I did, once I knew what the ropes were, I blew it out the park. And so what I'm telling you guys is this year, Donald Trump blows it out of the park. And you know what else is going to help him? The stock market settling. The stock market is just, boom, it's just right there. It's up from the time he was president. And he even said this. He goes, hey, I want that stock market to slow down. I don't need the stock market to continue to go through the roof because I need room for the other stuff to kick in. And that's exactly what's happening. I'm just telling you, folks, this is where you want things to go. Anyway, the Gridiron Dinner, they say it took place Saturday night in Washington, D.C. Dozens of journalists and politicians trading lighthearted jokes. During his speech, Trump joked that he was late because Jared couldn't get through security, which I thought was really one of the funniest quips. Son-in-law Jared Kushner having his security downgraded. And it was funny, one of my buddies, who's a Goldman Sachs guy, good friend of mine, went to SMU, he says he's mad at Trump. A black guy who's, by the way, staunch conservative, but he's like, Kevin, he's making all these promises, you know, he's this. And one of them was he brought up the fact that they had lowered Kushner's security. I'm like, man, really? You know, that's the stuff you're going to get mad at? You know, and I walked him through it because he's like, man, we're going to get our butts beat in November. And I'm telling this guy, what planet are you on, Marcellus? We're going to crush the left. I'm telling you guys, we're going to crush the left. I want you to understand the lunacy they live under. They believe that Donald Trump should be impeached. They believe that this fake Russian narrative, I mean, they're the only ones. The populace doesn't give a crap about Russia, but they believe that it's a big deal. They ignore all of the good signs in the economy. They don't believe that the tax cuts, the crumbs, are going to impact the election. They don't. And I could go on. There's 3 or 4 things that one of them he talked about was he hasn't repealed Obamacare. I said, man, nobody's worried about Obamacare. Nobody's worried about the tax. That's gone. Nobody's worried about going to the hospital anymore. Trump's going to have a solution in place before November of this year that more than meets the needs of people's health care. More than. And not to mention, the majority of the people, whether the media tells you this or not, they are happy that Donald Trump is getting rid of whatever aspects of Obamacare that they have to face. Get over it, folks. What you're watching with Donald Trump when he was at the Gridiron Dinner is a guy who is becoming so much at ease. He's like, man, this is a fun job. I get up in the morning knowing I'm going to tackle a series of new problems. And what's interesting is if you think about how Trump likes to get things accomplished and how he knows how to delegate and he can tell his staff, don't worry about the media. Don't worry about these other little things that DC used to get you concerned about. We're going to go, take care of business. I want you to think about that accountability factor. It's one thing when somebody's talking smack about you, and the way you shut them up is by accomplishing something. That's what Trump is doing. And the left have no defense for a person who's accountable.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.